So time for Q&A now. Please raise your hand. There is a microphone in the room. If you want to ask a question, raise your hand, identify yourself, and tell who is the speaker you want to address your question to. Who's going to start? There. Just wait for the mic. Thanks.
Thank you. I was wondering,
Who
am I?
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm Iliana Axiotiades. I'm the secretary of COSERAL, who represents grain trade. So I was listening very carefully. I was wondering to what extent you took account climate change, because that's going to be a big challenge. We don't know when drought will hit, when we're going to have a hurricane. So to what extent was that taken into account in your analysis? Thank you.
My analysis is based on what is coming out from OECD FAO, and this is on constant trends. But both OECD FAO, the baselines we're working in the two projects, Lamassus and Brightspace, and also the analysis we were doing when I was back in the Commission, there are scenarios that are applied that identify certain risks from climate. What happens if we have droughts here? What happens if we did in the past El Niño or La Niña type of phenomena. So this is being done. The focus of what I had right now, and what in my view is missing, is we need to come up with a baseline that is updated. A baseline that is not based on the assumptions we made when we signed the Paris Agreement, but we're 9 years later. And if we do, and when we do that, we can run scenarios on climate adaptation and mitigation on the basis of other models.
Mark.
Thank you. Another follow-up to you, Tassos. I mean, the forum welcomes all perspectives, and we've heard a perspective there from you, which is very interesting. If I understand correctly, you're arguing that the EU has been able to increase its production, will be able to increase its production whilst reducing emissions. It's the only place in the world to do that. And you conclude by saying that we need to increase productivity. That's not necessarily a view that is accepted by all. So can you go into a little bit more detail about why that is the case and what gives us the confidence that we can do that here?
I wish I could have an easy answer. I think part of it has to do with the fact that one of the many paradoxes we have in the European Union is that we have a very small budget, which has a significant part going to the common agricultural policy. So there is a subsidy envy view, and everybody looks at that. So the focus on the common agricultural policy is almost exclusively on what weaknesses it has, and never on what it has performed well. Looking at the OECD and the analysis that is being done on policy reforms, if you subtract the European Union from the policy reform, the producer support the equivalent, what is left in the rest of the world? So most of the reforms have been coming from the European Union, but at the same time, most of the pressures to do more have been coming there. And I think also a lot of it has to do with the fact that the European Union keeps changing over time, integrating more policies with less funds. So the pressure has always been on that. And I remember, and Pierre remembers that very well, we started discussing and debating about climate change already back in 2008-9 with the health check. It's not that it was outside our thinking. It is that it was always seen from a point of view where you had one policy that had money and other policies that didn't have. And that creates, a potential tension.
Question in the first line. The microphone.
Hi, my question would be for Tassos. I'm Olga
Your
Bykova.
name, please? Because, yes.
Olga
Thanks.
Bykova, working with Ukrainian Agricultural Council. Well, of course, my question is about Ukraine. I really liked your approach to how European Union may revisit the approach to Ukraine based on the future of Ukraine, potentially coming back to the breadbasket, specifically supplying food to sub-Saharan Africa and Asia. So can you please elaborate a little bit how would you advise the new administration in EU and in US for that matter to reassess how to help Ukraine to get that position and how to make sure that in line with that the European integration will still be intact and progressing?
Well, once you have been in a public administration, you never advise them anymore, and they don't consider you doing. Others do consider you doing advice. No, my point is the following: the first missing element in this discussion is: do we really have a food security problem or not? And we have had a debate in Europe that, in my view, was totally off the mark. You heard arguments: we don't have food security problem in Europe, but you never have a food security problem in one region. It's like climate change; it's global. If you have it somewhere, you're going to feel it everywhere. So if we accept that we have an issue of food security and the need for more food, especially in Africa and in Southeast Asia, how do you cover these needs? There is so much that the European Union can do, and I mentioned before that I think it's too optimistic in the current EU to expect we're going to export much more wheat. Our yields have been slowing down. So where are the other areas that could produce more? Clearly, Russia is coming on one, with a lot of weather variability, as we know. And the other one is clearly Ukraine. Ukraine has been gaining enormously, and it lost first because it was attacked, second because a lot of its production was destroyed, third because part of its production was stolen. Now, if you put all this together and you come up with a situation where we solve, not easily, but you find ways of addressing these issues, then the next question is, assume that Ukraine is not left alone and is part of a process of enlarging the European Union, what role does it play? And I personally don't see Ukraine playing a role in supplying the domestic EU market, for one thing, because it's a different type of products and different types of demands you have, but I clearly see Ukraine as having an enormous potential to actually help supplying Africa. Now, is that an advice? I don't know. It's one type of analysis. If people want to pick it up, they can pick it up. If not, there's so much that I can do.
So, after that.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation. My name is Ali Abdi. I'm the agricultural counselor at the U.S. mission to the EU. A question on productivity and the environmental impact. In terms of, in the context of those two factors in your analysis, you mentioned the analysis revealed productivity is off the charts and very high among the top. So, with respect to innovation and access to that, was that taken into account with your with the analysis that you performed? Innovation is the question in the context of productivity and environmental impact. Thank you.
Who's the question for? Is for Tassos? For who?
It can be actually touched on environmental as well as and productivity as well. So the two.
You're talking about
gentlemen.
the past. Yeah, achievements or the future?
The direction of where we're going with.
The direction is for you. But anyway, in terms of the past, one of the things is we're talking about average increases that are very uneven. I mean, you have, and they're also neutral with respect to size and type of production. When I was still in DG Agri, we were inviting in our conferences people that had the full spectrum, from precision farming to organic farming to agroecology. You could see examples of very significant increases in yields with very significant reductions of the environmental footprint. One of the big question marks that came in the European context is, do you have a farm advisory system like your extension service in the US that would pass the knowledge that already exists to farmers that would use it better? And here, there are many weaknesses in many parts of Europe. I don't know if you had focused in the future on.
Well, in the future, for the moment, we considered in the scenarios which I presented on kind of business as usual technological change, which we project based on the past co-developments in the productivity and GDP. But yeah, it would be an interesting question, and maybe David from the FAO perspective will say something about what actually the productivity change would have to be to better reconcile some of these targets with the food availability and stability on the agricultural markets.
I can answer.
Of course.
Yeah, one aspect of productivity that I want to highlight is that we have done a study recently in the World Bank with our colleagues, and what we found is that we looked at all commodities throughout the past 60 years, and what we found that, in fact, land productivity, also called as yield increases, throughout the past 60 years has been pretty much constant. So each year we had the same amount of food production on average throughout globally speaking, throughout the past 60 years. However, at the same time, we found that there's a huge inequality, so these productivity increases have been uneven, with some countries, especially advanced economies, growing much more in terms of productivity, while other economies growing much less. And there's also been quite a bit of variation when you look at commodities. You have some commodities such as soybeans that has gained a lot, but there are other commodities that have gained much less. So very sort of smooth increase throughout the past 60 years, but quite a bit of uneven increase when you look at both regional compositions and commodity composition.
Was a question on the third line.
Hi, I'm Jasper Dallijsen from the Permanent Representative of the Netherlands to the OECD. And I'm the agricultural counselor, and we discuss a lot the effect. Yeah, I'm not allowed to say subsidies, agricultural subsidies within our OECD communities. There are a lot of countries who think, yeah, it's negative, something it could be positive. I have a question for Mr. Havlik. What can you say about the effect of subsidies in your analysis? I'm very curious about that, so to learn more about that. Can you say something?
Very
yeah,
good
I know it's a
question.
long story, but okay.
Maybe an opportunity to make advertisement to one of the projects which we are coordinating, and where Tassos is advising us, where we are looking exactly at, on the one hand, what was the effect of the agricultural policies on the land use and the related carbon and biodiversity outcomes in the past, but also what it could be in the future. Well, I assume that there were many positive outcomes of the subsidies and of the different schemes. Particularly, one can be thinking about, for example, the biodiversity through maintenance of the farming in areas which probably could be since long time abandoned or converted into different systems. At the same time, just of the top of the head, probably for the carbon sequestration, afforesting some of these more marginal lands could be more beneficial. But detailed analysis we still have to undertake in this direction. Thanks a lot for the question.
Other questions?
Hello. Yeah, hi, I'm Kristina Lindström from the Swedish PermRep. Tassos mentioned that we need to measure carbon footprint. Are there any global prospects for achieving that, and how would we integrate it in global trade?
I don't know, you probably know about global prospects. So there are, I know, research projects in Europe that are focusing on this. What I have noticed is a lot of private sector initiatives with certificates, but when you ask the question, I mean, what you use here and there, they're different. When you ask the question, have you really controlled what you get is smiles? And in my view, the starting point has to be the public sector, right? And I hope that some of these research projects will arrive at a methodology that doesn't use 1,000 indicators, but a limited number, or at least we know what to focus on. That's part of what I'm trying to do with IIASA, apart from this project, actually.
Other questions? No, I have one for John, if I may, because
Please.
one of your slides was about crossing the commodity price index of the FAO and the food index, price
That's
index
right,
of
the
World
food price,
Bank.
our food price.
And we see that commodities are going up, and the price of commodities is going up, and the price of food is going down. So an ignorant journalist like me says, okay, this means that there is the risk of a new inflationary peak in the next months because commodities are growing in prices. Is this correct? Is this the right conclusion or not?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, or if I understand correctly, you mean the chart where we have food price inflation by FAO, which goes
Yeah.
up, the food price, not inflation, the food price level, let me correct myself.
yeah.
That's right. And then the commodity prices, which the World Bank Commodity Price Index, which monitors like maize, rice, and soybeans, which has been going down for the past, let's say, 2 years or so. So there was a chart like that.
Yeah, there was the
Yeah.
chart with the red.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
He asked a question
Oh, sorry.
that could have been asked because there was something missing in your presentation. I know because we worked on this slide. What
Okay.
John has used is the food index of the World Bank, which is the agricultural producer index minus the non-food items, minus tobacco and cotton. So what is food in the World Bank in his graph is production prices, but the food production prices. And what FAO is using is the consumer prices. And my understanding of your question is that you read it the other way around.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So thanks
You
for
got the
clarification.
question, the answer. Okay,
it's-
sorry about that. Yeah.
No, but
Okay.
you know.
Well, I don't know whether it helps to clarify the discussion or to confuse it, but just this morning I read in the newspaper, because yesterday John was saying that now maybe the prices are starting to head again a little bit up because of maybe lower harvest in some parts of the world. So today in the newspapers I already read, the food producers will again have to increase their prices to the retail because the prices of agricultural products are slightly heading up. So I don't know where they were when the prices were over the last 2 years going down. We may have some curious disconnect indeed.
Yeah, on your point, yeah, you're right. I mean, the prices, I believe, the past 2 or 3 months have been going a little up, but they're way lower than what we experienced the past 2 years. So the last increase that we have seen, I mean, it's small compared to, we have to wait a few months to see if this trend continues and whether that reverses what we have seen since the peaks we experienced about a couple of years ago. But you are right, there have been quite a few reports indicating the pickup in agricultural prices, but still early to draw a conclusion on this. And the amount is very little compared to recent history.
Okay. Any other question? If this is not the case, I think we can thank our panelists and we can take the technical break needed to change the panel and just 5 minutes, please, and we will be back. Thank you.